Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
So what I would like to do this morning is to begin with a sonic meditation in lieu of the music. This is a continuation of the talk I did on emptiness last month, for those of you who are here for the first time. And there's a sutra in the Perfection of Wisdom corpus. It's very, very short. It runs like this. Thus have I heard, at one time the Lord dwelt at Rajagriha on Vulture Peak, together with a large congregation of renunciates, with 1,250 renunciates, and with countless enlightening ones. At that time the Lord addressed the Venerable Ananda and said, Ananda, do receive for the sake of the welfare and happiness of all sentient existence this perfection of wisdom in one sound, the sound Ah. That's it. Yeah. So what I'd like to do is chant the sound Ah. So together as a group. So if you will, can I have the bell? So I'll begin. We'll do it for about 5 minutes. Simply chant Ah, Ah. So consider the sound that we just made. The sound that we just created arose out of conditions. Okay? It arose out of conditions. It was dependent in its nature. The conditions were us making it, right? Our chanting, the sound ah. Okay? So the existence of that sonic object clearly displays its dependent nature to our senses. Okay? So it arose out of our participation and our intention. Okay? And this sonic object was constantly changing. As people entered and breathed, louder, softer, okay? Constantly changing. So the changing and transformative nature of this object is clear to our senses. And the object is impermanent, right? It has ceased. It is impermanent once again in a way that is accessible to our senses. So these three, I call these three the three marks of emptiness, the three marks of emptiness. So change, impermanence, and dependence. Keep in mind this sonic object as we examine the facets of emptiness. It is the sonic realm, for humans, it is the sonic realm which most clearly displays for us the nature of emptiness. Okay? When I say that, I mean that in the sonic realm, emptiness is accessible as an experience, not just an inference. So, for example, this bell, this watch, they are also arise dependently. They also are constantly changing, and they are also impermanent, like that sonic object. They resemble that sonic object, but I do not perceive that this bell is constantly changing. I do not perceive the dependent nature of this bell, and I do not perceive its impermanence. I have good reason to believe that it's impermanent. Okay? I trust that it is impermanent. Okay? But I don't perceive its impermanence. That's the difference. So it's necessary to ground one's understanding of emptiness experientially, so that, like you can say, all things are impermanent. Yeah, like what? Like the sound of a bell, like the sound of our chanting. So, otherwise, it sort of remains abstract. Like, all things are changing. So, like what? Oh yes, like this experience that I've had. So then emptiness doesn't become so so free floating. It can feel emptiness in Buddhism can feel very abstract. So it's good to bring it back to the experiential domain as often as you can. And experiences in the sonic dimension are a wonderful doorway or gate to that understanding. Yeah. So it's not the only gate, but for humans it seems to be a very open gate. However, we don't always we don't use it, we don't recognize it. So it's a matter of bringing our attention to the emptiness of the sonic domain. So we need to bring our attention to it. That's why practice is necessary, to draw our attention to this understanding. So actually, everything that appears is an occasion of emptiness. Everything that appears is an occasion for the divine, or the eternal. Yeah, how is that possible? So you can you can understand it as everything falling under the arc of eternity. By arc of eternity, I mean if you take an arc of time, say like a day, like a day, right? So certain things endure for a day. Certain things are present for a day. A lot of things don't even last one day. They flicker. Say you light a match. It appears and it disappears. The sound that we just created appeared and disappeared. It didn't even last one day. But many things do. So if you take an arc of time like a month, some things endure for a month, many things don't. If you take the arc of a year, so we can all think of a year now, like 1998, that moment of the year, what endured, what was present through that entire year. So then, if you can take, say, the arc of time that it takes for our solar system to go around the galaxy, something like, 2,500,000 years. It's a very long time. Well, maybe it's a billion years. So I think it's billions. Anyway, it's really long. So what would be present during that entire arc of time, right? What not much that we can think of. Mountains would rise and fall. Human beings would come and go. As a species. So now think of the arc of eternity. Under the arc of eternity, then is the moment of eternity. So it's like you have the moment of a month, the moment of a year, and then under the arc of eternity. What is present under the arc of eternity? Okay, so that's what we are moving toward in our investigation of emptiness. What is present under the arc of eternity? Yeah? Does that make sense? Or is that a little... did I lose people here? Okay. Please feel free to ask questions. So as we investigate emptiness, I call it unpacking the meaning of emptiness. But keep in mind your experience. Once again, keep in mind your experience with that sonic object. So that will be like a grounding, as we move through how different Buddhists have interpreted the understanding of emptiness. So once again, the sonic object was dependent in its nature. It arose due to causes and conditions, and had no reality other than those causes and conditions. That's the point. It was constantly changing, and it was impermanent. So as we look at those three, different Buddhist scholars, masters, different Buddhist schools, take those three marks of emptiness, and it's like investigating those meanings, or I call it unpacking those meanings. And since emptiness is endless, there's endless interpretations, of the meaning. So take impermanence, for example. I was reading The Perfection of Wisdom in 8,000 lines, and there's a very interesting chapter there where the Buddha says that in the future there will be people who will falsely present the understanding of emptiness. And so, Subhuti says, how so? And the Buddha answers that they will say that impermanence means, that emptiness means impermanence as the abolition of an existing thing. And that is an incorrect teaching of emptiness. That's very interesting. What the Buddha was pointing to is this is part of what I mean by unpacking the meaning of these facets or these perspectives on emptiness, is that impermanence does not mean blasted into nothingness. Right? Impermanence means transformed into something else. Okay? So, for example, though that sonic object has ceased, it is still a memory. Right? So, though it has ceased to manifest as a sonic object in this room, it has been transformed into a memory. You know? So you can look at impermanence as loss of function. Loss of function. So, like if you have a table, and a leg breaks, right? So you might say it's no longer a table, right? But that doesn't mean it has ceased to exist. It means it no longer functions as a table, because it can't do what you want a table to do. Right? So as we investigate these things, like the meaning becomes deeper, more profound. And there are there's constant room for deepening one's understanding of emptiness. Last week I did emptiness from the perspective of space, emptiness from the perspective of time. There's also emptiness from the perspective of process, process or change. So one way you can comprehend this is think of yourself when you were like 4 or 5. Okay? So, if you can't manage to remember when you were 4 or 5, 15 is okay. So, and consider how you've changed. It's really good to perform this on yourself, because it's like your political opinions have changed, your likes and dislikes in food have probably changed. Maybe the literature you like has changed. It would be difficult, in fact, to find some aspect that hasn't changed. Of course, the body has changed. So it's a very good investigation. To consider oneself, as an unfolding process. And from the Buddhist perspective, if you deeply investigate this process of oneself, one discovers that there is no abiding, unchanging substance. And that's part of the meaning of emptiness. There's no abiding, unchanging substance. There is, that doesn't mean there's no continuity. There is continuity between the time you were 5 and the time you're mature. And so, but this continuity is a continuity of relationship, cause and effect. It's very, very good. You should do it sometime. Yeah, it's a good. If any of you keep a journal, it's a good good thing to do in a journal. It's like sometimes. At various times in my life, I've kept a journal, and it's really interesting to go back, say, 5 years or 6 years later, and you open it up and you go, "What? Who's that?" It's very. It's like you're reading about someone that you hardly even know. It's very, very interesting. So, then there's emptiness from the perspective of ignorance. Okay, this is one which is very prominent in the Zen tradition, in particular. So it goes back to Bodhidharma's appearance in China. Many of you know the story, but it's worth retelling. Bodhidharma was an Indian monk who went to China. And Buddhism was a hit in China. It was the thing. Everybody was very excited about it. And if an Indian monk came from India to China, that was considered really good news. And so he was invited to speak to the emperor. And the emperor asked him, what is the true meaning of the Holy Dharma? And Bodhidharma said, vast emptiness and nothing holy. Vast emptiness, nothing holy. Okay. And so the emperor said, well, who is it then who's facing me? So that's the typical reaction you see, like that somebody will hear about emptiness and they'll go, yeah, well, then what? So Bodhidharma responded by said, not knowing stands before you. Don't know stands before you. So this is what Bodhidharma was indicating to the emperor was that he was residing in what in the Zen tradition is called a before thinking mind, a mind that is before concepts, like a mind which has not settled and fixed on its ideas. So when you enter into meditation, you access that before thinking mind. So that non-conceptual mind. And our conceptual mind is like this little island, in the ocean of consciousness. It's just a very, very small part. That before thinking mind is vast. And it has a lot to do, if you think of that sonic object arising due to causes and conditions, our ideas also arise just like that. Our ideas arise due to causes and conditions. For example, every idea I'm communicating to you, I got from someone else. So ideas are like energy or like food that we consume. But our attachment to ideas is so strong that we consider them almost our private possession. It's very, more than in any other dimension of our personality, we fixate our identity to ideas. That's where human, that's a very intense area of human attachment, to identify with an idea construct. That's why people, when they get in discussions about ideas, it can get so very quickly so heated, because you're more likely than not, you're attacking someone's sense of identity. Have you ever done that unintentionally? Woo. It's like all of a sudden it's like you touch somebody's button, like you make a joke about, some politician or a religion, and then all of a sudden all this, you can practically see the flaming aura, emerging. It's very interesting, one of the things that meditation allows us to do is to perceive the ephemerality of the idea realm. So sitting in meditation, ideas appear in the mind, and they float by, and they disappear. Just like the sound emerging in this room, and that allows us to treat our ideas lightly, my teacher used to say, cut off all thinking. And what he meant by that is cease to cling to thoughts. Cease clinging to thoughts. It's easier said than done, though. It does require some practice, because it's a very strong tendency on our part to identify so strongly with our ideas. But, it's when we do that, when we fixate on ideas, we leave no room for anything to change. It's like my teacher used to call it rock's mind. Many people have rock's mind. Rocks, boulders. Boulder mind. So it's that mind that just will not consider any information that could possibly, even remotely alter, how they understand the world. So different Buddhist traditions emphasize different facets of emptiness. The Zen tradition tends to really emphasize this particular facet. It's in the Zen tradition, this is in the foreground all the time. So, like koan questions in the Zen tradition are designed to confront people with the incapacity of the idea realm to handle certain situations. It's like it pushes that issue. So if you can have insight into the emptiness of the idea realm, then you can move from that and understand the emptiness of all things. But that's the pattern of all Buddhist approaches. If you can understand the emptiness of the sonic realm, from that experience, you can understand the emptiness of all things, including oneself. That's why all these different facets and approaches, from my perspective, they have equal validity. One is not superior to the other. Oh yes, and here's emptiness from the perspective of analysis. So all you philosophers, listen up. So this is a very prominent way of accessing emptiness in some Tibetan traditions like Gelugpa, Sakya, and in the Chinese Tendai tradition, analysis is very important. Jia Yi is the pivotal figure in Chinese Buddhism for this kind of thing. So in some Buddhist traditions, if you became very serious about this, you would spend 10 years learning various forms of logic and analysis. So are you all going to enlist tomorrow? So like this. But basically, I'll just give you one example of if you take an object and you investigate the object, like this bell. Where do you find the bellness of the bell? Is it in the shape? Okay. Well, no, it's not in the shape because there are lots of things which have this kind of shape but aren't bells. Okay, so is it in the color? Well, no, because there's lots of things which have this color but they're not bells. So, is it in the weight? No, for the same kind of reasons. So it's like you go through this kind of systematic analysis, this kind of checklist of, and then you come to the point where you cannot find the bellness of the bell. You can't find it. And therefore, QED, the bell is empty. So empty of bellness, right? So this, I'm doing this very, very quickly. But if you really got into this kind of analysis and you did it correctly, it should come as kind of a shock, to you when you first engage in it. So, you have this chair. Well, why do I call it a chair? Where is the chair? So, is it in its parts? Is it in its shape? Is it in its function? It's not in its function because I can sit on a boulder, right? And a boulder's not a chair, etc. And then all of a sudden, it's like you lose a certain kind of confidence in the ability of the mind to discriminate objects. From that experience, you once again begin to treat your ideas more lightly. So that experience, if you really get into it, there's a falling away of the analytic consciousness at the end, which produces an experience of emptiness. Yes?
So what happens if you do that with yourself, like you just did with the bell?
Oh yes, right. You would do it with yourself also. For example, my name is Jim. Well, where is Jim? Is Jim, in the shape, in my shape, and in my ideas, in my likes and dislikes. They're all constantly changing. They're derived from, and so that would be part of the system of analysis. It's called analysis of other and analysis of self. But the same system of reasoning would be applied. So there's a very famous example of this called the Questions of King Milinda. Milinda is Pali for Menander. Menander was a Greek general under Alexander. And when Alexander died, Menander was given part of of India. It was, today it's Pakistan, but at that time it was India. And he became the Greek ruler of this small state. And like most Greeks, he had a lot of contempt for anything not Greek. Like the word barbarian is Greek for someone who doesn't speak Greek, right? So and he used to say, in all of India, it's all, they don't understand anything. They're thinking it's not deep, and probably Menander was trained in Aristotelian logic, because Aristotle was Alexander's tutor and all this. So he had a very firm grasp of philosophy. So finally, Nagasena, a Buddhist monk, appeared before him, and this is an actual record of the debate between Nagasena and Menander. It's called The Questions of King Milinda. Very interesting text, and. Menander has this view that there exists what are called substantial essences, that the reason you call a chair is because there is this chairness, and that's why, that's how we know it's a chair. See? And so Nagasena takes him through exactly this kind of analysis. Well, where is it then? They use a chariot. So is it in the parts? Is it in the shape? Is it in the color? Is it in this? Nagasena, just keeps pressing Menander about it. And finally, Menander, says, well, no, I can't find it, and Nagasena says, just so, O king. Yeah.
I like it because it's a game of words. If you're empty here, it's one word, then you have to have full. The opposite. And what you're doing with the bell is you deducting all the time, taking everything out. But what if you added to it? That makes the bell.
Right. That's a very good point. So one of the names for this system of analysis is called Madhyamaka, middle way analysis. And let me illustrate your point by a little fable. Suppose that I live in Sonoma. Suppose I came down for breakfast with my roommate Joan, and I informed her that I lived in San Francisco. And so Joan goes. He thinks I'm making a joke, right? And I go, no, we live in San Francisco. And so she says, she finally realizes that I'm serious, okay? And then she says, well, when was the last time you took the Golden Gate Bridge to work? And I say, well, I haven't seen the Golden Gate Bridge in a long time. She says, well, when was the last time you saw the Bank of America building? And say, well, I haven't seen it. When was the last time you visited Golden Gate Park? And so I haven't visited Golden Gate Park. So, she goes through these landmarks and she says, see, it's not San Francisco, not San Francisco, it's not San Francisco. And finally, after this kind of relentless, reasoning, it suddenly dawns on me that I do not live in San Francisco. Right? So this form of analysis is based on the idea that people have the habit. This form of Buddhist analysis, emptiness from the perspective of analysis, is based on the idea that people don't know where they live. They think they live in a world of substantial and isolated, separately existing objects. But that is not, in fact, the world in which they live. So it's the same kind of approach. Well, if you lived in a world of, separately existing objects, then this would follow. Then you would be able to find the bellness of the bell, the chairness of the chair, because otherwise they don't exist separately. So they go through this checklist. Is it the form that exists separately? Is it the this that exists separately? No. And then finally it dawns on the practitioner, I guess that's not right. But then this form of analysis, in my opinion, goes too far by insisting that that's all emptiness is, which is the point you made. Because emptiness is also a certain kind of fullness. So when this kind of analysis insists that that's all that emptiness means, it would be like Joan saying to me, no, you don't live in Sonoma. You live in not San Francisco. And living in not San Francisco is the totality of where you live. In an odd sort of way that's true. It's not a false statement. that I live in not San Francisco is not a false statement, but it's not really where I live. So these forms of analysis have a beautiful function, and the function is to point out to people that this is how you think the world exists, but it ain't that way, and I can demonstrate to you that it isn't that way. 1, 2, 3, like Nagasena approaching Menander. I mean, that's a good situation for this kind of analysis to be used in. But the other perspectives of emptiness begin to fill out where you do live. So, for example, take the dependent nature of phenomena, or the interdependent nature of phenomena. So the interdependent nature of phenomenon is being able to understand that all of existence manifests in any given object. Now that's the fullness of that object. Being able, like the sonic object that we created was dependent upon all of us. It was dependent upon our breath, which is dependent upon the air, which is dependent upon the plants that breathe on earth, which is dependent upon the sun. So that sonic object is full. Okay? So when we say it's full, it seems like the opposite. Like you said, the two are opposites, empty and full. But actually their meaning is they're opposite in approach, but they point to the same understanding. So, yeah.
Gay man, could you apply that to say cock, which by the same analysis is empty, and yet would have
full.
The
Of course you could. It's not a standard Buddhist facet of emptiness, I would say. But who knows? Sexuality arises due to conditions, right? It's like across a crowded room, there he is, and sexual energy constantly changes, and it's impermanent. Our sexual encounters come to an end. So certainly our sexuality exhibits all facets of emptiness. Yeah.
Jim, can you speak to the relationship between impermanence and death and grief?
Impermanence, death, and grief?
Yeah. And I'm not sure if that's
So when I was talking about impermanence before, and I mentioned that impermanence means loss of function. Okay? So it's like, and the example I used was a table. So when if a table leg breaks, you would say, well, that's no longer a table, or, toss it out, but that doesn't mean it no longer exists. When someone dies, there is a loss of function. The function is that you can no longer have breakfast with them. That's the loss of function. That you can no longer have a conversation with them. There's so much that is missing when someone dies. That it feels to us like impermanence as blasted into nothingness. But if you stay with it, there are many functions which remain. And you begin to understand death as a tremendous transformation. This is especially acute, for people we love. The most significant thing is that the love remains. So the function of love transcends the physical presence. And that relationship continues. So in this way, the dying are still present. Just as that sonic object is still present. The dying are still present in that they have a functional relationship with us, but it's not the same function that they had before they died. grief is a way of accessing those functions which transcend the physical presence. So, and whenever this subject comes up, I always say that people should not push away grief, and they should not listen to people who say, "Oh, you'll get over it." My personal experience is that you don't get over it, but you integrate it into, it becomes a theme of your life, you know, and which is different from saying you learn to live with it. You know, like it becomes part of your understanding. If you push grief away, then accessing those functions which transcend physical presence becomes very, very difficult, if not impossible. You know, I know that's very quick, but does that respond to your question? Or?
Sounds very helpful. I mean, sometimes I can interpret from your talk that there's not permission to grieve.
Right.
And I've heard that in other traditions.
Well, in our it's part of our culture. So when my lover died, he had 2 kids. His oldest son was given 3 days off of work. You know, like, and that was supposed to take care of it. You know, like in traditional Chinese culture, you're given 3 years. You know, like it is expected that, you know, the grief process will take 3 years. You know, like I doubt that's still true in China today, but in traditional Confucian culture, there were a lot of rituals involved to go through this process. You know, like people aren't, you know, like it's like, you know, 3 days, okay, that's enough, get on with it. You know, like, it's not, I mean, that's like utterly unrealistic. You know, like and not helpful. You know, like so. You know, everything that exists is an occasion for the realization of emptiness and the divine. And that is true of our feelings as well. You know, that feelings are just as real as this, you know, as the table, as you and me. You know, like so. You know, but it's a matter of how we approach those feelings. You know, just as how we approach the sonic domain will determine whether or not we can access the sonic domain in a way that will help us understand the emptiness of all phenomena. Similarly, when we access our feelings in that way, then feelings can be a gateway to deeper understanding. You know, if we make feelings a project, you know, and part of our identity, then we have a problem. It's like it's like fixating on an idea. So, I mean, a good example of that is anger. You know, like when anger appears, I mean, you know, like we're human beings. If anger appears, you know, like all the precepts in the world that say we shouldn't be angry don't make any difference because there it is, you see, right? But, you know, like clinging to the anger is what I call it the anger project. You know, it's like the anger project is, you know, like so-and-so cut me off in traffic, I got their license number, boy, you know, I will not rest until, you know, like they are, you know, they pay, you know, for that. That's the anger project. It turns into hatred. Many, many people live their lives based on the anger project. Grief can also become a project, the grief project, you know, like in which, you know, like I am the person whose loved one has died. You know, like that is me. You know, like that's who I am. You know, like, and that becomes very destructive. You know, like because it brings to oneself and to others in the same way that the anger project would become. You know, like so. Yeah, is that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think just to be looking at the emptiness alone, if you put the acceptance come along, work with that, do you think it would be easier? Just accept, for example, you know, your loved one passed away, whoever. Yes. Accept that this person come with me this far.
Yes.
And this person have a destiny, they have to move on. But recognize the part that we would happen together for that period. But also at the same time we're able to let go because we're able to accept that. And again, it's emptiness too, because nothing permanent. To recognize that part that we be together.
I call that gratitude. Like gratitude. It's like when you allow grief to pass through you, what emerges from that is gratitude for the time you spent together. And acceptance for the fact that time has come to an end. So grief transforms into gratitude if you allow it to grow. If you allow it to grow. If you don't cling to it. Is that in agreement with you? Yeah. It's so. That's a good way to end this talk, and because we are reaching the end, and that is emptiness from the perspective of gratitude. Because gratitude, I've said it before, but I never tire of it. That is the fullness of emptiness. That is the understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. When that feeling of gratitude is present, the wisdom of emptiness is active within you. So I'm very grateful to have been here. I'm very grateful for the year 1998. I wish all of you a wonderful year in 1999. And may we all quickly attain enlightenment and save all sentient beings from suffering. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.